Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Figure Forecast podcast, season 2. Crazy. Thank you all for all of the support during season 1. We were super happy with the response, and we are super excited to bring you more of the same great content, great chats, and great guests this season. To kick off season 2, we have none other than the Miss Autumn Cleveland, who recently just won the Chicago Pro and is such an incredible athlete that we've both followed for a long time, and just felt that she would be an absolutely epic guest to come on and kick off the season with. So Autumn, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to just
thank you for having me
say
on.
hey and give a little rundown about yourself.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity. It's really cool to connect, like, especially like how you're just saying, like, we're all spread out all over the world. And I just really like to just talk bodybuilding, I guess. I've just been doing this for 20 years, competing for 20 years straight. So there's a lot that I can talk about, but mostly I just hope it helps other people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's what we're all about. We just want to provide lots of information. We kind of found that there was a big gap, particularly with the figure kind of category, and very hard to find any accounts or podcasts or anything like that that were just figure
there's very
focused.
few
So
of them.
yeah, for sure. So that's what we're trying to build here. So to kick off, we obviously have to deep dive into the Chicago Pro, your recent win, ticket to the Olympia. How are you feeling after that win? How was the whole show day experience? I know, because obviously you were sick before your last show, and you know things hadn't gone to plan, and this was kind of like a redemption show, and it all paid off.
Yeah, actually Chicago wasn't the first plan. So I had done Vancouver 6 days before. Yeah. And so I didn't really anticipate Chicago that much because I was hoping to win Vancouver. Mm-hmm. So that was like, in the scheme of things, after the Olympia with the whole point system change, that reconstructed my strat. I actually could make a strategy this year. Last year and the year before that, it was a matter of too close to quit kind of thing with the points in play. But then when they announced that the point system was eliminated in January, my initial thought actually was to shut down for the year and just not compete. It was an intimidating shift. And so like the first couple of days I was like, there's no way. Cause it was, let's see, the Olympia was like mid-December of 2022. And then only 2 weeks later, they made that announcement. And I thought, like, I'm not going to have enough time to improve. Plus, after getting food poisoning at the Olympia, 2 days later, Derek and I both got influenza A.
Great.
And it took a month for my system to recover. And so that was just a month lost. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to make the progress that I need to get better in order to win a show to try to qualify for 2023. And then about a week after that, I was like, pardon my French, but I was like, that's bullshit. If I don't, basically it was a choice to either sit back and let people go after what I wanted or for me to level up. Mm-hmm. So after a week of back and forth of like, do I compete this year or not? I felt like I owed it to myself to just see what happens if I level up. And I told myself, like, if by March or April, if I didn't feel like I was in a position to go for it, then I would just still continue to take the year off. But I just work well under pressure. If I put pressure on myself, all that does is it puts a timestamp on me to say, get it done. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, there's that thought process, which I've recognized is, for me, negative. If I think, oh, I've got time, I'll do it later, I'll wait. Yeah. That's like dead end for me. And so I was like, if I just push and act like I'm going to compete, it's going to get me where I need to get closer faster. But I had to make a more realistic barometer gauge around like March or April, and things were just working well. My body recuperated very well, and I was able to make some changes. This was the post I made yesterday. or 2 days ago with my back, because my back has always been my weak point, and I have scoliosis. And so I just kicked everything into high gear and really started to hone in on the things that were going to help me improve my back development. And that was what was my deciding factor. I was like, if I can improve it, then I can condition. But if I don't improve my back, then I shouldn't waste my time or energy conditioning. And I had felt like I had made enough of an improvement for me on a personal level. And so going into like prep, I didn't know each week if I was going to actually step on stage or not, which is why I don't like to talk about my business, because I don't want that pressure. But as I was starting to lean out, I was really starting to like what I saw. And I thought, if anything, I should attempt getting on stage for my personal, like what I meant to bring to the Olympia before the food poisoning thing, which was it with an improved back and the same or better conditioning. And so I started to like really push for that. And it was only like 3 weeks out from Vancouver that I actually even considered that show, because initially I was aiming for Atlanta, which was the same date, which for me is only 5 hours away drive. And I was like, oh, logistically Atlanta makes sense. But then as it got closer and closer to that date, I was like, wait a second. I was like, there's 2 shows on the same weekend. And at this point in my career, sometimes the deciding factor is like, what would be a more enjoyable experience? And I've been to Atlanta to compete a few times, and I don't enjoy the city as much. It has nothing to do with the bodybuilding show, just as far as like comfort and getting to see scenery. Atlanta just felt a little bit more stressful than for me to actually take off to another country. so that's what I asked myself. I was like, I've never been to Vancouver or that side of Canada. And I was like, what's going to be more fun for me and like the experience of it? And I really like challenges, and as it's fun to kind of take off independently as a woman and just go after shit. And so I was like, my boyfriend fully supports everything as long as I'm like safe. And so he drove me to Indy, which is like 2 hours from where we were, on the 11th. And then I flew from Indy to Washington, rented a car, and drove across the border 40 minutes. And I found this really cool Airbnb. So it was like a nice, relaxing experience. And I felt ultra confident going into Vancouver. Like my body I've never seen it look like that. And especially at my first show of the season. And so I was ecstatic, like to get up there. There was zero stress. The whole trip and experience was very smooth, and I didn't have a reason to think I couldn't win that all the way up to it. It in the show itself, like the people backstage were really awesome. It was a fun vibe. There were only 6 other competitors, and they were all super nice and brought like good quality. So for Vancouver, there really wasn't anything else that I could have done to have a great experience. Which is why when I got the placement that I did, I actually felt ultra let down because my package was undeniably better than it had been at the actual Olympia. So I thought, I was just beating myself up all night thinking, how do I go from top 25 in the world at potentially like my worst show day look from the food poisoning, and then 6 months later turn around undeniably better and not be able to win? And so that like knocked my confidence way down. And all night I was like, I should just quit right now. if my ultra best can't win, then I should just stop, because I'm not going to play the game that I played the last 2 years, because there's no point. So essentially second place means nothing to me right now. Because it wasn't getting me closer to my goal. And so I don't know, I just every time I step off stage, I have like 1 to 3 salads. That's like the first thing I eat. I love salad. And I don't get to eat much toward the end, so a salad is like very rewarding to me. I'm on that level of deprivation. But this time I actually had the dressing with the salad. Like I took in extra fats. Like I normally don't eat the dressing. I just eat what's in the salad. But this time I was like, dressing, I'm not going to compete in the next anytime soon. So I took in like a lot of fat content that night and I did not sleep. I just tossed and turned back and forth. I was like, well, maybe I should do Chicago. Maybe I shouldn't. But like I said, I was just really deeply questioning myself, and it has nothing to do with the girl that won. She looked great because she was definitely sharper than me, and she had really good back development, which is where I wasn't, where I may have been lacking there. So this has nothing to do with her either, because she brought a great package. It was just more about me and how I felt. And so I just didn't want to waste my time or feel stupid for continuing if I should stop. And so that's what led into Chicago. And the next morning I woke up after I'd already like decided I was going to wrap it up for 2023. And I didn't know what to do with myself. So I just went to the gym at Canada. I get up at 3 a.m. here in Louisville, and in Canada, that's midnight to stay on schedule. And so I just got up at midnight and like got on the stair mill, and I don't know how, but I did 2 hours of stair mill intervals while I just worked out shit in my head, trying to figure out what to do. And I talked to Derek, my boyfriend, and my coach, and I talked to 2 of my friends who were very, probably my biggest critics as judges. They're extremely honest with me.
Yeah.
And they'll tell me the truth. And so I kind of just asked them, I was like, is it worth trying one more time before I really decide to wrap it up and pull out? And all of them were essentially in the boat of, if anything, just to show up the same way or slightly better, that it was worth trying again. And so once we came to that conclusion on Monday, we only had 4 days to get better before we had to do it all again. And I had to get from Vancouver into Chicago logistically. So I ate pretty much nothing but tuna for 4 days. And I did a lot more cardio on top of my already cardio, just to deplete back down and see if I could get a little bit leaner. Even though I didn't get feedback from Vancouver, I don't know what held me back in Vancouver. I didn't end up getting that feedback, so I just pushed it to extremes for personal reasons. And when I got to Chicago, everything felt very aligned. And I was like, that was at the point where I thought, even if I don't win, what did I want to show the world at the Olympia last year? So I wore my Olympia suit. Like I wanted the total package. I wanted everything to send an Olympia signal, because I've spent 6 months trying to identify with myself as that. And it's really hard for me to build up my confidence, because I've always been the almost competitor. Like it took me 11 years to get my pro card, and I almost got it. Everybody knows for the last 2 years, I've almost gotten first place like too many times. And so I'm trying to break that identity with myself. And I worked very hard at that. Like I've gone to therapy for it. I do a lot of mind work, a lot of self-analysis. Like I break myself down constantly, trying to reprogram myself into thinking and identifying. So for me, it's like, I need to come out there and feel like I left nothing at question. And so I actually didn't feel confident in Chicago. There were a lot of reasons why I could have talked myself out of that show for it not being in my favor. But I was like, I'm just going to show up and do it for me and give it everything, so that if this is my last show for the year, I can at least have closure with it. And that's how I carried myself. And that's how I did every single action leading up to stages. No stone unturned. And I was not willing to let there be any risk or question. And I felt really good in that. Like that's where my confidence came from at that show, because I was like, this is all I've got. And I gave it.
Gave it.
Even through the show itself, like those girls were great. In fact, Adele, she had just won the show in Atlanta that I had planned to do, and she qualified for the Olympia, and she was also in Chicago. And I was like, And even Shanice, she has an incredible physique. So I'm thinking, this isn't an easy competition. Like, I knew there were going to be girls there that were tough.
Yeah.
And so that's why I didn't assume that I was going to win it, because I thought, like, it's not an easy show, a grab. So I just wanted to show up with quality, my best quality, knowing that the other girls were going to bring theirs too. And that's what made it fun. And everybody was so nice. Like, honestly, Chicago was an incredible experience, probably more so than Vancouver, because I got to have my boyfriend there. He drove up to come see me. And I don't get to have him there at shows very often, because I pay for everything out of pocket. And so that was just one of the times where it worked out, where we could get him there. And he was in the audience, and like, it felt right. Like, it felt very, once I got to Chicago, I was like, everything's aligning here too.
Mm-hmm.
So the win was kind of a shock to me, because I did not expect, almost wasn't going there for an Olympia qualification. I was going there to shift myself more into an Olympia identification mindset with me.
Yeah.
And I tell my clients this, it's like, every time I take the pressure off of winning, those are the rare times that it actually happens.
Yeah.
When I just say, you know what, I'm going to do this for fun. And then it's fun. And then it just works out.
Yeah, 100%.
So how do you like switch from that? So like, obviously you said like you're locked in and you change that mindset. Like how do you do that? Like, because obviously you still need the pressure, but like, how do you challenge that? Do you know what I mean?
A challenge every day. Like, have you ever heard of like paradigm shifting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's where I started to learn that you could do that with yourself, like shifting your paradigm. And I've been studying this for years, like decade. I'm really into the manifestation mindset and self-creation, and also being able to change that at any point in your life, at any age. And like, right now I'm a bodybuilder, and I'm going to fight until I've got, I can say I've given it the best I can to be a top bodybuilder in the world. But when I'm done with bodybuilding, it'll be something else. And I'll shift my identity then too. But like, a big practice of mine is, my dad told me this when I was little. He said, dress for the job that you want to have, not the one that you do have.
Yeah.
And so I dress like a pro before I was a pro, and I dress like an Olympian before I was an Olympian. And it's like, it sends a message to what you see in the mirror, but it sends a message to people around you and how they treat you.
Yeah.
And the way that you talk about yourself. Like, I think that's what was hard for me, was I couldn't verbalize the word champion with myself, even after I had the proof of winning, like the Phoenix show last fall. That was my first pro win in 5 years. So I didn't know how to win. Like, I've watched the video so many times of when I actually got that announcement at the Phoenix show, and I can see the process of me not believing it even as they said it, because I've just been so beat down with second place most of my career. It's like, there's a similar video, the time that I turned pro. I had been so conditioned for when they called my competitor number, them moving me to the outside of the call outs. So on that day when Sandy said my number, I'm like, okay, which side do I go to? Which end do I go to? And it took me a few minutes to realize that she was actually telling me to move toward the center. And once that clicked, I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be in the middle. This is what it feels like to fight for a win. I didn't know. And I didn't get a taste of that again until 2021 Savannah Pro. That was the first time 4 or 5 years later, after turning pro, that I'd actually been in that pro middle spot for just a second. I ended up getting fourth, but just for a split second, I thought, oh, some judge thinks I'm good enough to be considered for the middle. And that just shifted everything. And so they're like they are little baby steps. And for me, they're little breakthroughs of proof. And so, like, if you notice my shadow boxes in the back here, I have to set my entire environment up as proof for myself, because I will talk myself out of believing it. But if I have to
Yeah.
look at this every day and see the accumulation of things that I've accomplished, every day I have to do my scoliosis exercises up here, and I'm forced to look around and think like, okay, that wasn't a dream, that wasn't an accident. This is like real. And so I have to like, this is what my therapist has me doing. She has me doing like affirmations.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just like a game of convincing myself. And so like, even with the, I've got a shadow box with the Phoenix win stuff from it. And I've looked at it for 6 months, and the whole time I would say like, yeah, I won that, but was that an accident? Was it a fluke? Was it just because someone else didn't show up? Like I still was doubting myself even after the Olympia happened. And I still haven't posted my pictures from the Olympia 7 months ago, because I still am not now I'm working at this now. This is my new focus, to actually process and absorb what happened 6 months ago, a dream that I've been working for 20 years, and it doesn't feel like it happened because it was such a blur. Everything happens for me so fast, and it's so intense. And especially with the food poisoning, it's like I didn't even get to mentally be at the Olympia. I physically showed up, but I wasn't mentally there. And so that's coming back to bite me now, but I'm working at trying to convince myself of that. And so like really, I haven't processed Chicago. That was only 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to get better and more efficient at my processing so that I can be more in the moment. But my whole career has just been like, go, 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 what's next? This, the day after, I didn't tell anybody else this, but I had every flight and hotel booked for every potential show I was going to have to do this year, which was 8 shows from July through October. And that's how I have to prepare just in case I keep getting second, like that's a suck mindset. That sucks. But at the same time, I have this, I've deemed it the beat the door down mentality. Like if I keep getting second, then I will be back at the next door. Now, if I slip back, if I regress, if my physique or my health gets worse, my placement consistently starts getting worse, that's when I need to reevaluate. But if I'm close, I'm going to keep fighting for it. I'm not going to make it easy. So that's what I had booked in like the day after Chicago. I just woke up with this, like, it's heavy. It's so heavy. I don't think people understand the rocks that I have to carry mentally and emotionally on top of what we all do as athletes, the physical demand. And it was just, the weight was lifted off of me the next morning. And the whole morning I was just like, cancel, like for 8 shows. Like the best way I can say it is like, I get my life back for like at least 2 months.
Yeah.
And that never happens for me. Like it's usually, I'm just locked in for however many months it would take. And so now, this is the first time ever that I got to come in, get the qualification, and now I get to breathe a little bit and restore myself. My best friend's getting married in September, and I get to actually go to her wedding and be mentally, physically, and emotionally present. I was going to physically be there, but I was afraid that I was going to have to leave there and go straight to Phoenix to try to win for the Olympia. And that I was like, what if I'm not as fun, or like, what if I'm not there to, like, what if I can't enjoy things the way I really want to? And now I get to be there for her and see that moment for her like a real friend and like a real person, not a machine. And I'm excited about that. Like just getting to enjoy other parts of my life while I get to enjoy Olympia prep. Cause last year I didn't get to really enjoy it. It was only 6 weeks and I still hadn't processed. So that's like the part those are the parts that people can't see, but the way that it feels to me is so dramatic. And I think that's what causes me the most pain. Like training and dieting is no problem compared to the emotional pain that comes with this sport. And then at this level.
For sure.
I think it's like your head as well, like trying to battle with your head to, you will do it, but like if you kind of have that self-doubt in there, or like anything that tries to get itself in there, you're like, get back.
And that's just it. It's like, how do you like shutting out the noise when part of that noise is your own inside voice.
Yeah.
I'm my biggest critic. And so like, I don't need other people to tell me the negative things. I'm already hyper aware of them. And so for me to have to shut that voice out every hour of the day gets exhausting.
Yeah.
You obviously, you mentioned you've been at this 20 years, and I would imagine anyone can appreciate the frustration and the upset and the kind of deflation and stuff that comes with almost there, almost there, almost there, and you have to just keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yeah.
How did you keep going? Like you mentioned, you obviously work with therapists and do a lot of like internal work. So is that what you would credit being able to actually stick out 20 years before?
Well, the therapy, I think I've only been doing that for like 3 months, the last 3 months.
Yeah.
I think. There's a lot of reasons I should have gone to therapy before this, because of the whole reason I got into bodybuilding was from bullying. Like, I probably should have seen a professional about that along the way, but I didn't. I just dealt with it in my own way. There are a few, if I could drill it down, my mom and my dad always made me believe that I could be something great if I wanted to. And so they've always fed into the whatever I want to do. They gave me the tools that I needed to pursue it, but they gave me the confidence that it's possible, and they never let me think otherwise. So I've always had that, at least, because that's kind of what saved me through the bullying. And so that was just kind of my mode. I started to lose touch with that in my 20s. I think I was just the best way I can say it is I didn't have the right people in my life in my 20s.
Yeah. That is
and I was starting to lose that thought process. But then luckily Derek came back into my life, like when I was 25, and he reset me. He fed into the I can do anything kind of mentality.
Yeah.
So that's like one standard of like why I kept going, because I thought like, and I don't know how to explain this, but like some really mind-blowing things have happened in my life, and I know it's not an accident. I can't put my finger on why these things happen. I don't know if it's like just my belief process, but I've had a really incredible life with some wild experiences that all it took was for me to say, wouldn't that be crazy if that happened? And then it actually happens. And so I have to be really careful with what I decide, because that's exactly what I'll get. If anybody listens to the whole secret mentality, the frequency, my frequency is super high vibration, and I'm aware of that. So that's why I have to be careful with my thoughts, because like I joke and say I'm a witch, because like if I say it, it's like a spell. So I think I got so focused on, like when I was bullied, like I went from an 89-pound skinny girl to, I don't know what I weigh now, but like I feel like, in a good way, like a monster.
Yeah.
And that takes its own creation process. But also, like, I went from feeling like very weak mentally and physically, and also like nobody liked me. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't accepted by the world. Like, I had to undo that. And the only safe place that I felt like I could escape from that was in bodybuilding. And in bodybuilding, I could be whatever I wanted to be, because no one put that standard in my head. But when I went to school, I felt awful about myself, and everyone around me made me feel that way. And so like I started to escape from high school so that I could go to the gym, because that was my safe place. And the gym turned into the stage. And so like for me, it turned into a matter of survival, or I was gonna, what would have happened to me if I didn't believe in myself and keep raising the standard for myself for a space that I could become great. I don't know. And I don't really want to think about what I would have become if I would have believed those people or not fed back into myself. But then when I got the right people back around me, that's when it kind of became the standard. like when I have hard days believing in myself, my boyfriend Derek and like my dad and my coach Shane, they won't let me accept otherwise.
Yeah.
So those are my pep talk people. But I think it just comes down to, and I've said this a lot, but like right now my platform is bodybuilding. But in life, I'm not going to do this forever. In fact, I don't know that I'll do it I don't really want to do it for another decade. I'd like to be where I want to be before that so I can move on. But I just believe that I feel my purpose here on earth in this time as a human being. And I think part of my purpose is exploring my own human potential and not, I have to meet that. It's like, I know there's a lot in there and I have to evolve and like go through that, because that's why I'm here. And I think the point of it is to go through this process with myself and then share that with other people too. Because like, I'm not here for bodybuilding. I think I'm here to like, I want to change lives. And I want to make other people figure out what they want to do and what makes them happy. And I want to show them how to unlock themselves.
Yeah.
So like with being a prep coach, being a posing coach, or just like I do art too when I'm not bodybuilding, and I DJ when I'm not bodybuilding. And so like those are ways that's like creative expression and freedom. It's just a question of like, what do you like? Like, what do you want to do? And whatever I do in bodybuilding, if someone lets it be, it doesn't have to be about bodybuilding. It's just I'm expressing the formula that I've figured out and the way of thinking so that they can apply that to whatever their area of life is, which is why like I've never understood people that they're like giving people or giving me shit just because they don't like bodybuilding. It's like, cool, you don't have to like bodybuilding. Apply this to whatever you like and we can all be happy. There's no need to hate on different areas. Exactly. And so that's why like people who want to eat whatever they want and they hate exercise, I support them just as much if they support me in doing what I do.
Yeah 100%.
I do feel like bodybuilding has like a massive crossover to like general life though, like, you know, the way that you are like disciplined in what you do, like if you're, you know, when you're so locked in and passionate about it, if you apply that to literally anything you want to do, learn or master, like it's the same thing really, isn't it? It's just that's what we're choosing to do, but it does cross over to so many things.
It does. And like the things that I've learned from bodybuilding, like the disciplines that I learned from bodybuilding, because I started this when I was 15 years old. I would like to pretend that I applied some of it when I was in college, like to be a good student, but I wasn't a good student. I worked a lot. I worked 3 jobs while I was in college trying to support myself. And so like to have the discipline and the work ethic to do that, to hustle, I got from bodybuilding. And then bodybuilding and art are very closely related. The way that I run my businesses now, like I wasn't a businesswoman before, but now I'm a good businesswoman because I take what I've learned from bodybuilding and I apply that. So that's what I love about bodybuilding is like people get, to me, bodybuilding and competing are 2 different realms. And I actually love to see people who work out and take care of themselves even when there is no stage, because that to me that's harder. And I was just talking to I call him a kid in the gym. He's actually like a beast. But I just, you know, hey, are you stepping on stage this year? Because he had said that before. He said, no, I'm just going to keep working out. He's got like a ton of muscle. I think he's 23. And I thought, good for you if you're 23 years old and you look like that just because you are enjoying the process of being in the gym. And he looks like he could step on stage and like, I mean, if this kid wanted to, he could be like an Olympia contender bodybuilder by the time he's 30. And he's just like, no, I'm just like lifting weights. And I'm like, keep that. Don't ever lose that. If you add stage, cool. But if you never step on stage, and like I've got some friends too where they're just not just in incredible shape, but they love their bodies and they're healthy and they're using their bodies in a functional way and they have no desire to step on stage. And I think that's cool. As much as I love competing, they are still gaining the lessons and the disciplines from bodybuilding, and they're keeping that balance, which is really hard. But I know I wouldn't be as good as I am in the other areas of life if I didn't go through the character building aspect of bodybuilding, and now I get to apply those parts of that formula into other areas of life. And I just watched this, but if I'm sure other people have, or if they haven't, they should watch the Arnold documentary, because everybody, like, I make a lot of Arnold art because Columbus is close to me, and I used to go to the Arnold like every year, and I don't idolize Arnold because of bodybuilding the way that I think people think that I do. I idolize his mindset.
Yeah.
And there's only two people that I idolize, and it's him and Michael Jackson. And that's because they went to places that no one asked them to go. They could have stopped short and still have been the best.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. They kept going beyond what anybody was asking them to do, just to find out what's in there. And like, that's my mode. And so like, those are people that I look to, that I'm like, okay, yeah, bodybuilding is fun right now, but what about after that? And it's like, just human potential, like, that intrigues me. And that's the part that won't let me stop until I fully pursue that.
Yeah. I love bodybuilding as well for that reason, and the mental strength, the resilience, the lessons that kind of it teaches you, and like the mental battles you go through kind of in that whole process, like they really do transfer to outside life. So it is definitely a big learning journey, which I love.
Yeah.
You have a lot on display in the background, and I kind of want to ask you about the frame of the keys. And
that plant hasn't died for like 6 months.
Well done.
That's the biggest thing
Well
that I'm proud of in the room.
I would be too.
I'm a plant murderer, and that thing has survived. So yeah, there's that on top of the suits. That's my pro suit from 2018, and I just outgrew it physically, so I thought I should give it its honor in a box. And then my Olympia suit back here, but now also the Chicago Pro suit.
Yeah, they're stunning. You obviously, you are a posing coach as well as a prep coach, and it is very evident for anybody who follows you. You're extremely passionate about it. How did you end up going down that path?
That is actually, so in 2011, I graduated college with my bachelor's in exercise science, and at the time I thought I was supposed to be a personal trainer, because that's all that in 2011, that's all there was. It was not the world that we live in today with options. And prep coaching wasn't quite full blown called prep coaching yet. I had this was around 2003 or 4, like the people who coached me, I don't even think I called them a prep coach. They were just like my bodybuilding coach.
Yeah.
And then there was a big shift, like around 2011, like right when I graduated, of coaching. And I wanted to try my hand at it for the first time with some people who just let me. Like, I was doing it like pro bono. I just wanted to see if I could lead other people into prep coaching. But part of that was, at least in Louisville, Kentucky in 2011, posing coaching didn't exist. If you needed to learn a bodybuilding pose, you needed to connect with someone who had done a bodybuilding show. And I thought, like, how am I going to prepare someone for stage? Like, they don't know that they need to pose. I know they need to pose, but like, even when I was learning posing, there were only 2 people here who could teach me those things. And they got me in the positions, but like, posing also wasn't the standard then that it is now. Like, when you watch a judge explain this to me, or tried to explain this to me about 6 or 7 years ago, and it took me a minute to really fully grasp what he was saying, but he was like, "You're a performer now. This is entertainment." And I was like, oh, this isn't just so I can show my physique to a judge. And that shifted my whole mindset toward posing, where I was like, oh, now this is a performance, an expression, which what I know now is, I would say 90% of my posing clients don't think that they are performers in the beginning. But the standard that I hold them to is that by the time we're finished, you are a performer. In the beginning, it's just get your body in these positions so that the judges can see your muscles. But by the end of it, that's my favorite part about being a posing coach, is like, I see the transformations from the day they can't walk in the heels to the day that they are commanding attention in their heels, just from their whole body language and their confidence. And like, I started teaching posing classes in 2011, and it started with like maybe 6 competitors. And then over years, I started to build that up into like, we were like 20 people just Monday classes. And I was like, God, there's a lot of people in this city, that men and women of different divisions. And I was like, that's cool that they trust me to like teach them these things. So I was teaching posing classes back then, which eventually turned into like individual in-person posing sessions. And also what evolved out of that was that's when they started having more actual like NPC posing clinics here, which they have specifications to make it like an NPC posing event. And they started asking if I would help with those. And so that was cool, because I was like, oh, my actual organization trusts me to help teach the standard for posing. So I've been going to posing clinics as an attendee since like 2013, just so I could learn. And I would learn all the divisions. Like, even I'm a figure competitor, but I would stay for like all of bikini. Wellness didn't exist then, but like women's physique and like even the men's physique, men's bodybuilding, I learned those poses too, because I thought, like, if a man's going to come to me, I need to know what I'm talking about as a woman. Like, I need to know what these poses feel like and what the judges are looking for. And so I started teaching those clinics too, along with our judges. I think I want to say like since 2016 or 17, maybe, we started actually having those events. But what really shifted everything was when COVID happened. I was running my business out of a brick and mortar gym. And in where I live, the gyms were all shut down for about 3 months. And I was like, okay, we're going to have to slow down the show pace for my prep clients, but we can still work on posing at least. And so I started doing like online stuff. And then every gym in Louisville reopened in 3 months later, except for the one that I ran my business out of. They just decided to permanently close. And it's really hard to find a studio space that would allow me to just use it here in Louisville. And I was like, I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to run my business. That was taken from me for a second time. I've been through 3 gym closures, and I was able to keep my in-person business there. And after that shut down, I was like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of my business being hurt because a gym fails. And so I was like, I'm just going to take it all online. And I did. And like, I was so resistant to it at first, because I didn't know if I would enjoy it as much, or like if I would do a good job. Like, teaching posing verbally and not being able to physically manipulate something is very hard.
Yeah.
Because what I'm learning is like, not everybody responds to the same. Someone can say a phrase to try to get me in a pose, and sometimes it just doesn't register or click. I have no idea what they mean by what they're saying, and it's useless. And then someone else will say a completely different phrase, and I'm like, light bulb. I'm like, okay, I get that. So my body is doing the same thing, but I'm like, how do I find cues in verbal instruction to get someone through a screen to do what I want them to do, so that they can understand it? And so I've had to like rephrase my languages with posing since 2020 because of that. But that was probably one of the greatest things that came out of COVID for me, was I became a better posing coach. And now I can work more efficiently for all of us. But also, when COVID happened, that was when I actually recorded all of the modules that are in my posing course now, because I was just making that for my prep clients to be able to teach them what they needed to know to get on stage while we couldn't meet in person. And then a year or two, no, it was a year later. That's when we actually, Derek and I were sitting in the backyard and we were like, these are good teaching tools. And the problem I was having was scheduling with people. Like I was at my full capacity with online. I couldn't open up any more spots. And I was like, I think this might be something. So we took all of those modules and turned it into a course so that people could access it any time and not have to deal with the scheduling or like the availability, like basically not get stressed out. But the other reason was when I was doing these online sessions, it's like I was repeating myself way too much because I was saying the same thing to every new person that I got.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've spent a lot of money on this sport, more than I should, more money than I've spent on anything else. I know the pain of being broke and trying to get on stage.
Yeah.
Because most of my career, I've been broke or been in debt.
Yeah.
Just to try to make a show happen. And I was like, why do competitors have to pay a half an hour rate when I could just give it to them cheaper and price it to where it's fair to give them the base information?
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't need to spend as much money on individual sessions where they're only going to learn a little half an hour at a time. And I'm like, if I can build this course out, they get a full-blown stage prep base as much as I can teach someone without having to make the individual adjustments. And now my posing course members need 0 or maybe 1 or 2 sessions if they're having trouble with getting those individual needs met. But it was taking me 12 sessions to teach someone everything that I know about stage because I know 20 years worth. And there's also like the aesthetics, like the makeup and like the things I know from expediting and being a test judge. Like there's no way I could teach someone everything that I know in less than 12 sessions. And that was a lot of money for the competitor. So I was like, I'm just going to make this. It's not just a posing course. It's like my dumping all of my experience into one spot. And the goal is to help them get their posing down faster, to deliver information that they don't even know that they have questions about yet, and to save them time and money.
Yeah.
And all of that came out of COVID because I didn't have any other options.
Yeah. You were kind of forced, but it grew into something that was actually amazing.
So it was a blessing in disguise.
I don't think people realize how much competing actually costs sometimes. Like
I made a webinar for that because people don't. That's one of the first things I send to people. I'm like, if you think you might compete, here's how much you need to set aside.
Yeah.
Because I think they need to know that up front.
They absolutely need to know it. I think my season this year cost me $10,000 or $12,000. Like it was insane. Absolutely insane. Yeah.
And it's like, if you're going to spend that kind of money because you're passionate about something, why would you leave any inch of anything unprepared?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way I look at it. So it is an investment. That's what I tell people. I'm like, you have to invest in your posing one way or another. I know what I charge for a posing session because of the demand. And I know what some other posing coaches charge, and it's an investment. It's like you can't get on stage without a good tan or a good suit. So you can't get on stage without good posing.
No. And you can see it because it's such a focus for people now when someone doesn't have good posing and you're like, oh, like you can't watch. You're like, no.
And it kills me because I thought in my head, every time I see it, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could have talked to this person because I could have warned them. And it's not even, it's just a lack of knowledge. And I realized this until I did another podcast with someone else based in Australia. Yeah. And they were explaining I think they know more about the other parts of the world that I didn't know about until she said this. And she was like, the resources that are available to other countries are so limited.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the standard isn't known. And when she said that, I was like, oh my God. I was like, and I still attend. I criticize my own course every time I can attend a posing clinic or talk to a judge. If I don't know the answer, I ask a judge to make sure that my information is up to date and accurate with the standard for our organization in here, like at the US. And that's what she was saying. She was like, we don't have posing clinics. She was like, even social media is kind of on a delay, sort of. And I've recognized that, where I'll see competitors from other countries attend some shows, and they're still great competitors. Like, they have great bodies, but I can see there's just a difference in, like, even the suit designs or suit quality or the posing, the stage appearance. Sometimes it stands out to me, and I can see it where I'm like, oh man, I wish I could have got on my course to make sure that they knew these things if they're going to come all the way over and do the show, so that they feel like they're up to this a level playing field.
What are some of the big issues you notice with posing? Like, what would be the kind of top things that you see go wrong, in particular in figure?
Oh, in figure, definitely lat spread.
Yeah.
People, it's I don't want to say they don't understand, but when I break things down to teach my clients, it's like, I recognize how our brains are wired in movement.
Yeah.
And we have to reprogram their brain to understand, to allow their body to get into the position. Because like, when we think about it, what we think we're doing is not actually what needs to occur. And so I have to, the biggest posing mistake that I know of is people not understanding their poses, or what they're supposed to, not what they're supposed to do, but what they're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to get caught up in the mirror, and they can pose all day in front of their coach when it's just them and their coach in the gym, mirror or not. When you get out in the stage environment and you're looking down at people who are criticizing you, and you can see it on their face, and there's bright lights and music and the audience, other competitors, there's a lot of stimulation. And if you don't own your posing before that moment, you're going to get lost.
Yeah.
And so most people don't. I didn't get this. No one ever explained posing to me. It wasn't until, like, they would get me in the positions, and I'm like, how can I replicate this under stage pressure and stage stimulus? And that's when I started to I was going to like yoga classes, and like, I've never been like a dancer. I'm a terrible dancer, but anything that would teach me like coordination or like just movement in general, I started to put myself in those positions so that I could become better at things that I sucked at. And in the process, I started to learn like how I needed to explain it to myself so that I could grasp the concept in order to replicate it. And so that's, of all divisions, I would say people just maybe don't have a clear explanation or understanding of what our goal is to show the judges, and B, what that should feel like to you on stage. Because another thing I see is overposing. People flex muscles that they should not be flexing. You shouldn't be contracting. And there's just a whole lot where it's like my philosophy is like, get your bones positioned first, and then put tension only where we need to put tension. Because the other huge mistake I see, especially at a pro level, is wasted energy on stage. And if you're posing in a way that is wasting energy, you're going to get beat out.
Yeah. Your
poses are going to get sloppy. You're going to run out of fuel. People who understand where they can conserve energy on stage, those are the people that the longer they pose, the better they get, and the more intense they can last in these. That's the game I like to play, is I almost warm up through stage posing. So the initial comparison, I do a good job making sure that I hit my poses. My presentation is minimally energy conserving, but I save all of my energy for that first call out, or whatever call out I get. I save my energy for that, because that's where it really matters. And I tell myself, I'm like, okay, first round of quarter turns is a warm up. Round 2, I'm going to push harder. Round 3, I'm prepared for multiple rounds of quarter turns. And I just pose harder and better throughout that process, whereas everybody else deflates.
Yeah.
And it's because I know better. I've done over 40 shows and I know where I can conserve my energy and where it's wasted. So that's why I teach my posing course members. I'm like, I teach them to pose in a way that allows them to perform best, which is pacing ourselves.
Yeah.
So the number one thing is like people not understanding their lat control, but then also not taking posing seriously. So like committing to their practices and building up their endurances, but also I have a whole thing for my course members of like getting into character. And I'm a different Autumn when I go on stage than I am on my daily life, whatever roles I play that day. And I think it's important to get into character before you get on stage, the same way that you get into work mode when you're on the way to do your job. Yeah. And that's what actors do. That's what other stage performers do. They have to let go of all of the things that they are not that day and shift into who they are in stage form.
Yeah.
And I think that's a practice that for me, that's the fun part. Like I get to create an alter ego and I get to be that alter ego every day when I practice posing. I love it because it's my escape.
Yeah.
So when I get out on stage, I'm like a bull ready to come out because I'm ready to play. Because I don't get to do that. I don't get to play other times in my life. It's all work.
Yeah.
And all business. And so like that's my free fun time. And so that's what I want. That's what I want posing to be for other people. Because especially as women, the roles that we carry every day, it's like, when do you get to let that go? I'm not a mother, but I've got several clients who are single moms of their own kids and then bonus kids, women who run their own businesses. They play the roles of like being supporters for other people, like girlfriends or wives or, whatever. When do you get to leave all of that and just be yourself for even 15 minutes? And it's like, I think that's important. It's it's an empowering moment for women. And I think like using posing as an excuse to feel like I've kind of battled with the like feeling sexy on stage just because that's not how I am in daily life. I'm like a weirdo. Like I'm not like, I'm actually not graceful and I'm not like a smooth person. And so like even being sexy for me is super awkward.
Yeah.
And I've had to practice my own level of comfort with that, even on social media. Like that is something I go to therapy for now, is to like, it's a weird area in our sport to want to feel empowered as a woman to feel and express sexuality without being sexually objectified every day.
Yeah.
That to me is harder than any part of competing. It's like, where do you find your boundaries and your protection there? And then when you go out on stage, it's like, I can't just go out there and throw myself into that form because that's not practiced for me. So if I don't practice my posing, I would just be throwing myself to the wolves, hoping that it would click and it would look atrocious. So like, that's something I have to actually practice for myself, is like being okay with feeling myself. Like,
yeah. Allowing yourself to be like, yeah, look at me.
Yeah. And
yeah.
And I get so many clients that actually love when they tell me this. Like, they shouldn't be afraid of it, but I like when they're just very open and they're like, I can't walk in my heels. I'm not like a sexy, sassy person. I'm not comfortable with walking or movement. And like, it's fun for me to teach women how to use their hips.
Yeah.
They're good hips. And I get to teach you how to swing them around, like to their comfort level, of course. But like, that's something I really enjoy, is like opening up people to see themselves in a way that they didn't know if they could, but it's in there.
Yeah. Oh, I think
so
that's the best bit of coaching, full stop. Like, no matter whether it's prepping people or posing, like getting them to kind of recognize themselves and think positively about themselves and be like, like that's the best bit, 100%. I have a million other questions I want to ask you, but I am so conscious that we have gone on so long. So maybe we'll schedule a part 2.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But that was an epic chat. Like we literally needed to ask no questions. You just gave us the goods. It was awesome.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I'll talk too much if you let me. So
No, it was
definitely do
amazing. Thank you so much. Like I so enjoyed that chat. And I know everybody listening is gonna absolutely love it.
I hope it helps.
Yeah, I know it will. Do you want to tell everybody where to find you, how to work with you, your posing
Oh
course?
yeah. Probably the really Instagram is like the main place that people can find me. My Instagram handle is automatic is how I pronounce it. It's AUTUMNATIKK. So there is posing course and like posing session information there, but anybody can just shoot me a message there and I'll get back as soon as I can. Or they can go to my website, which is autumncleveland.com. So those are the most direct ways to reach me. Yeah, that's all I can think of right now.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And guys, thank you so much for listening. Welcome back to season 2. Whatever platform you are listening to us on, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, give it a thumbs up, give us some support, share with your friends, and tune in next week. Thanks for listening.